May I call to order the first meeting of the Bills Committee on Insurance Companies, Amendment Bill 2014. Election of the chairman. Any nominations, please? Mr. Chen Kimbo, I nominate Mr. Nom Ting Kwong. Do you accept, Mr. Wong? Any seconder? Mr. Really seconds. Do you accept? I do. Any other nominations? All right. If there are no other nominations, then Mr. Wong Ting Kwong elected. Please come forward.
Okay. 多謝各位啊。
Thank you. Do we have to elect a chairman, a vice chairman? I believe we do need one because the bill is over 2 inches thick. And I believe we're going to take some time. I nominate Mr. Chang Kin Po. Any seconder? Mr. Christopher Chung seconds. Do you accept, Mr. Chen? I do. Any other nominations? If not, Mr. Chang Kin Po elected Deputy Chairman of the Bills Committee. All right, please invite the administration to join us now. Any declaration of interest, please? Members, please declare interest in accordance with the rules of procedure. The organization I serve has got insurance business, all right? Mr. Mlang Singh has declared his interest. I represent the Insurance FC, and I am engaged. I have a consultancy company who's engaged in reinsurance business. All right. Mr. Chen Kimbo has also declared his interest. Present for this meeting, we have Mr. Eddie Zhang, Deputy Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. Ms. Annie Choi, Commissioner of Insurance. Also from the FS and TB, Mr. Peter Wong, Mr. Paul Wong, PAS. From the DOJ, we have Ms. Emma Wong, Senior Government Counsel, as well as Mr. Peter C., also Senior Government Counsel. Welcome. So shall we first give the floor to the administration for a briefing of the bill, please? Thank you, Chairman. And good morning, members. How much time have I got for this briefing? Actually, there's no time limit, but please be as succinct as possible. Thank you. Chairman and members of the BC, good morning. I'd like to brief members on the Insurance Companies Amendment Bill 2014. The bill has two purposes. First, to set up an independent insurance authority, or the IIA, and to introduce a statutory licensing regime for insurance intermediaries. My briefing will be divided into 4 areas. First, an overview of the insurance industry, and secondly, the purpose of or the policy considerations for setting up the IIA, the major proposals of the bill, and also a smooth transition. First, an overview of the industry. There are 158 insurance companies in Hong Kong with 80,000 registered insurance intermediaries covering both agents and brokers. Agents represent insurance companies, and brokers represent policy holders to select the right products in the market. There are about 40,740 individual insurance agents, and with over 10,000 life insurance policies. They are general insurance with disregarded other things, and we have over millions of policyholders in Hong Kong, and insurance companies are regulated by the Office of OCI, and for intermediaries, there are 3 self-regulatory organizations: the IAAB for companies, and for intermediaries we have the Hong Kong Confederation of Insurance Brokers and Professional Insurance Brokers Associations. The number of complaints the past 3 years have been rather stable, about 1,400 per year, and they're mainly about untrue representations, service quality, and claims and liability matters. Now, the purpose of setting up the IIA is to protect the interests of policyholders, and we don't want to overregulate to the extent that will stifle innovation in the market. We have to ensure that our insurance industry regulatory infrastructure is modernized to facilitate the stable development of the industry. We have to maintain communication with stakeholders, and we have also made reference to the regulatory regime of a financial market in coming up with this framework. FSAB, or the Hong Kong MA, has issued a report on our regulatory regime here, and one of the recommendations is to set up an IIA as soon as possible. And the powers for SROs currently are not really comprehensive. The assessment is done every 10 years, and the last one was done in 2003, and back then we already urged to set up an IIA for the industry. The OIC is a government body now, and it lacks flexibility to employ the right professionals from the market for a regulatory purpose. The coverage of the bill is rather wide. There are 6 major parts. First, powers and functions of the IIA. Under the current ordinance, the power of such an authority is to regulate the industry to protect the interests of insurance holders, policy holders. We've added new functions in the bill, and in the past 2 to 3 years, we have consulted both the public and also the industry, and we've accepted the feedback received. First, we have a new regulatory or licensing regime for intermediaries. So the OIRA has this statutory duty to regulate intermediaries, and we have to enhance the understanding by policyholders and potential policyholders of insurance products and the insurance industry. And IIA has to formulate strategies to ensure that our industry is competitively in the globally, and it also has to conduct studies relevant to the insurance industry with a view to sharing the research findings of the industry and to ensure a healthy development of the industry. It also has to assist the FS. Now, the structure, we propose that there should be a chief executive and a chairman and at least 6 directors, with at least 2 directors from the industry, and a non-executive director will take up the majority of the board. And there will be 2 statutory committees under it. One is responsible for life insurance, and the other for non-life insurance policies. And in making new regulations, stakeholders and also the industry must be consulted. Income comes from 3 sources. First, from levy on insurance premiums. We propose to collect 0.1% of insurance for a life insurance policy. The cap is 104. Otherwise, other types of insurance 5,000. And we also have a sliding scale. and also license fees from insurance intermediaries, and also administration fees. The checks and balances and accountability, submitting annual reports to the LegCo, and to invite the FS to scrutinize its annual plan. We'll also have a tribunal to review the decisions by the IAA covering disciplinary matters. The chairman of the tribunal must be someone who is qualified to be appointed to be a High Court judge, and then an independent procedures review committee will also be set up to see whether the IA has complied with due procedures in making decisions, and the IA also has to comply with the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance and Prevention of Bribery Ordinance, where it has got inspection and investigation powers. And this is similar to the regulatory organizations in the business sector. In the bill, we have added new criminal offenses. For instance, in future, an unlicensed an operating intermediary with no license commits an criminal offense, and if false information is provided, and is also a criminal offense. The IA has a few regulatory powers, including reprimand, fines, suspension or revocation of license. The fine is capped at $10 million. If somebody or also 3 times the profit or loss avoided by the person concerned, whichever is higher, and there can also be revocation or suspension of license. When a fine is to be imposed, the IIA must first issue a code, and the level of fine must be commensurate with the severity of the offense, and to ensure that the intermediary will not go bankrupt after the fine. And these are existing practices of financial regulatory bodies. Now, licensed intermediary must fulfill the following requirements: a fit and proper person, hasn't gone bankrupt before, and his reputation, integrity, so on and so forth will all be considered. There are 5 types of licenses. I can skip this part because it's quite similar to the current registration system. We have individual and corporate licenses, also for agents and brokers, respectively. The main ordinance will cover the principles of conduct, and then once the IIA is established, it will issue codes to facilitate the industry to comply with the ordinance, and these are internationally accepted code of conduct. We are asking for the minimum in this bill. And before the IIA makes code, it has to consult the industry first. And for the intermediaries, we would like to set out the principles, and in broker companies and agent companies should have an internal control system. They should have control officers to be responsible for the internal control matters. Transition, as I said, we want to avoid unnecessary panic or confusion, because intermediaries are currently licensed or registered already. For all validly registered intermediaries, once the bill is passed, they will be deemed to be licensed, and then for the first 5 years, they will not have to pay any license fees. And for appeal and complaint cases are still in progress. The IAA or the OCI will continue to deal with them, but for registration not yet completed before the establishment of the IAA, fresh applications have to be done. We have set up a working group for smooth transition.
And the 3 self-regulatory organizations are also involved. We hope to have a seamless transition. So I would be glad to further explain to members and answer any questions. Thank you. Question time from members. Not many have raised their hands, so no time limit, but try to be concise. Chen Kim-po, Sin Chung Kai, Raymond Wong, Wai Keung, and Yu Si Wing. I haven't drawn any line. If you need to ask a question, you can go ahead. And we can also have a second round. Chen Kim-po. I first asked for a hearing for the public and the trade. Well, in the next item of agenda, in AOB, we will ask for members' views. We record your request. Perhaps I will let others speak first, because I'm going to take a long time. Sin Chung Kai. First, like Chen Kim-po, we also hope there would be a hearing for the public to express their views. Now, the directors in future on slide 12. Now, the structure is that you will have 2 persons from the trade. Now, you have tens of thousands of practitioners. Have you thought of any election systems so that practitioners can be elected to become directors? Deputy Secretary, a brief response. Now, first, the RIA is a regulatory organization. It doesn't represent the trade. It's not an organization that represents the trade. So we wonder whether election is an appropriate approach. And internationally, there is an International Association of Insurance Supervisors, IAIS. They have issued some internationally applicable principles. One principle is that the regulatory organization has to be independent of the government and of the trade. Now, in order to be independent, in order that can be good communications with the trade, I think a balanced approach is to have a minimum of 2 persons from the trade as a minimum. There's no upper limit. And there are advisory panels. Now, Mr. Sin mentioned that there are 40,000 practitioners. Now, they can offer their views in the advisory panel or committee. Now, the IA is a regulatory organization, so the regulator and the regulated have certain conflicts of interest. So if there are too many practitioners in the IIA, they may not be able to effectively exercise their regulatory powers. Now we can go into this in clause by clause stage. Now there is a problem. Now there must be 6 practitioners. There's a chairman, CEO, 6 directors, of which 2 must be from the trade. And we can have more than 6 directors, no upper limit. I think the board should be mainly constituted of people from outside the trade. You say that there should be a minimum of 6 directors, minimum of 2 practitioners. So apart from the chairman and CEO, and so there might be 8 non-executive directors, and they might be all from the trade. So can we have more people from outside the trade among the non-executive directors, a majority? Now, the international principle is that the regulatory organization must be independent of the government and of the trade. So on the directors, I don't think we would see a situation where there are more people from the trade than those from outside the trade. So there can be flexibility. Now, we can consider having a clause stipulating that there should be more directors from outside the trade than from within the trade. So there would be a minimum of 6 directors, out of which at least two must be from the trade. So maybe you should stipulate a proportion. Mr. Sin is concerned that the trade would regulate itself. So there would be no effective regulation. Now, on the minimum of 6 directors and on minimum of 2 with trade experience, now I have no strong views on that. My view is that the non-executive directors should be made up with a majority of people from outside the trade. This is not just insurance. This is the basic management concept. So your provisions should make that clear. Now, the CE may appoint these directors, and if there are no limitations, then he can appoint certain people. It's a small circle elections, you know. Now, the current administration might not have that intention, but let's make that clear. At some point in time, a CE might have that intention. Mr. Sin's point is clear. Our thinking is the same as Mr. Sin's, but we haven't stipulated it that closely. So we can talk with the DOJ on whether we should include such a clause as precaution, but our purpose is that there should be more non-executive, more directors from outside the trade. So your provisions should make that clear. I think at least the people from the trade should not be in a majority. I think the administration has responded, and Mr. Sin's point is clear. I hope the provisions can reflect that. Raymond Wong, Chairman. Now, the IA will replace the OCI and as an independent regulatory organization. Mr. Sin mentioned the number of directors. Now, the trade might be concerned. Here it says minimum of 2 with trade experience. Now, we may have to set a number in the legislation, so there would be at least 6. Now, we can talk about the proportion. Now, the Deputy Secretary said that the IA is a regulatory organization and not a trade organization, and so it shouldn't be, the director should not be elected popularly. Now, but also it said that to have a fair intermediary system, then there can be greater confidence. Now, the IA is to regulate the industry and not to promote the trade, the industry. So it seems a bit self-contradictory. Now, the intermediary should be able to elect their representative. And you said there's no need. You say this is a regulatory organization, independent of the government. Now, you say you are not. This is not an independent. You say this is not a trade organization. So why are you talking about promoting the sustainable development of the industry? So this is a bit contradictory. The whole spirit is that there should be an independent regulatory organization. It's regulation. Why is it that we had OCI and now a statutory independent organization? Because it's going to be regulatory in purpose. There's going to be advisory panels and tribunal and so on. So I think perhaps you can give an answer now. If do you want to respond, Madam Commissioner? 2 points. Now, promoting the development of the insurance market. Right now, this is already in the bill. In Section 12, 4A2F, there will be EC added, promote the development of the market. Mr. Wong said that this should be the function of the trade and not for the regulatory organization. Now, actually, Chen Kim-pong will agree with me. Both sides have to do it together. Now, right now, I am of the OCI. The law doesn't stipulate that I have to do this work, but very often when it comes to market development, the regulatory organization has to do some advanced work. Let me give an example. RMB policies. Now, this has to be preceded by discussions between ourselves as the regulatory organization with the mainland authorities. It will take a period of time on how the renminbi will be circulated back and so on. And then the trade will design the products in line with the framework agreed by us. Another example, for instance, self-insurance. Now, this has to do with financial matters. Very often, the regulatory organization has to be involved in the advanced work. Of course, the trade also has its work too. So it's a matter of cooperation. Very often we have to talk to the other regulatory organizations, and that is the advanced work that we do. So it depends on the type of development. It's not that we are not involved. So that's why the trade asks that there should be such a provision in the new bill. And we also feel that this is already what we are doing. So there's no harm in including such a provision so that it's in the legislation in a clear way.
So we must have a policy framework first before the market can design markets design products for promotion. Mr. Wong, I am looking at it from a common sense point of view. Yes, I'm a layman. I'm not like Chan Kim-po, but the policy considerations mentioned in your brief I've talked about a better protection for policyholders and not to stifle innovation in the market. But what is the means? What is the end? And what are the priorities? Of course, the priority should be on regulation. And if the regulatory framework is properly set up, then it will be conducive to market development. I'm looking at it from a common sense point of view. There is no need for you to emphasize promoting market development. Of course, I am a layman, and Kim-po is a professional, and I think he has a lot of views to express from the market perspective or from the trade perspective. And to impose a maximum fine of $10 million on intermediaries. Yes, I think this is a concern for them. And according to the administration, there will be difficulties in imposing different levels of fines on companies and intermediaries. This is not good enough. I hope that when we scrutinize the bill clause by clause, you can give us some response. Difficulty in enforcement is not a good justification for rejecting proposals. We want you to separate companies and intermediaries in the level of fine. I don't think what you propose is good enough. Yes, we understand this view from the trade. We have also made reference to overseas practice. Well, in overseas, in other countries, they do not separate companies from individuals. Now we're talking about the maximum fine, not a fixed fine. And for the persons, we would meet our fine at the level commensurate with the harm done by or damage done by the persons concerned. If we have separate maximum fines for companies and individuals, I think we're assuming that perhaps the severity of offenses committed by individuals or by companies would be more severe than that of companies. So it is not really the case. I think in the guidelines we can offer more explanation to let the industry understand that we're not targeting at individuals. Rather, we just want to ensure that the fine is commensurate with the severity of the offense or the breach. Now, the fine is not the only option available. There can be other sanctions, including revocation or suspension of licenses. Yes, in our guidelines, we will elaborate further. We will. That is better than having different levels of fine for companies and individuals. Can you say, depending on the gravity of the breach, I will be more comfortable if you have that proviso, because you are separating. Well, perhaps I've been too brief. well, the guidelines will cover the following things. First, to impose sanctions depending on the severity of the breach, whether there is a repeated violation. Second, whether the fine will cause the person to go bankrupt. So these are considerations for sentencing. The administration plans to set up an quasi-judicial body, the Insurance Appeals Tribunal, IAT. And according to the provisions, the IAT will be chaired by somebody that is qualified to be appointed as an High Court judge, and there will also be 2 individuals from the trade to be members. Can you explain to us the qualifications and the criteria for selection? As I said, the IAT must be chaired by a person who is qualified to be appointed to be a High Court judge, plus 2 members of the tribunal. We will appoint a number of qualified persons. They can be professionals or from the trade. The chairman of the tribunal will first consider the details of a case and decide the expertise he needs to make a decision. For instance, it is about an insurance company with financial issues and judicial issues. Perhaps he will appoint an accountant. But if the subject concern is an insurance agent for a company providing insurance coverage for an infrastructure project, if IIA believes that the individual has breached his code, given that it is such a specialized type of insurance, then the chairman may need someone from the industry to help him. So depending on the circumstances of the case, the chairman will decide what members should be appointed to help him to make a fair ruling. So the chairman is to be appointed by the CE, right? Yes. For the 2 remaining members, they will be selected depending on the facts of the case. Yes, we will first appoint a panel of members, and then for each case, the court, the judge or the chairman of the tribunal will then select 2 from the panel of pre-appointed members. Well, according to Mr. Sin Chung Kai, there will be a chief executive and also chairman and also at least 2 directors with knowledge or experience in the insurance industry. The proposal is not more than 2 or at least 2 directors. Well, Chairman, not less than 6 directors. There can even be more than 6 if the proportion is not kept. Then the say by the 2 directors from the industry would be lessened. So for both cases, the description is not at least 6 directors and at least 2 directors. So I think Mr. Sin is over-worried. The functions of the IIA is to promote the stability of the industry and to protect the interests of policyholders and potential policyholders. And it regulates both intermediaries and companies, and only the interest of policyholders is protected. But what about the stability of the industry and also protection of policyholders? And what about protection for current intermediaries? Did you offer them both protection and regulation? Well, you may say that I will not talk about an advisory committee for the industry. But as we all know, the stability of the market or the industry would depend on these intermediaries. And you also rely on them for future funding of the IA, because a levy will be imposed on all insurance premiums. I've worked on a few cases. We all know that a big company fired all its employees in one go. So intermediaries have lost their rice bowls, and all their clients have lost their intermediaries. So I think the interests of intermediaries and policyholders are one. And for many policyholders, they trust their agents, and therefore they have taken out insurance coverage from them. If you replace their intermediaries, they may feel threatened. And we've seen a case where an agent is receiving pay from their company in the form of a loan. So within a certain period of time, if you have not achieved a certain quota, they have to go and they have to return the salaries they received back to the company. And I know for some large companies, they are not happy when the senior executives left, and they would even withdraw their provident fund. And it was only after we've interfered that the benefits under the fund was returned back to them. So do you have anything to protect the interests of intermediaries? Because if they do not enjoy a stable environment, then the whole industry cannot be stable. The policy objective is to ensure that the intermediary will serve wholeheartedly, and policy holders can be assured, and then the public have trust in this industry. We must ensure that the industry is in general stable, and that means a company will not collapse easily. Otherwise, the public will have no confidence in this sector. And why do we have to protect policyholders? Because insurance contracts are very complicated. I think professionals understand that utmost faith is required in such contracts. For an individual policyholder, they have to fully trust. They have give the full trust to a certain contract, and therefore we must protect the interests of policyholders. And I thought Mr. Zhong was talking about insurance agent. We know that a company and an individual is like a principal and an agent. Very often, the conflict is between the principal and the agent. We have some requirements about the governance of insurance companies. So that is the function of the IIA. There is nothing about protection the interests of intermediaries. However, we require insurance companies to have a good governance. To a certain extent, this is about treating their insurance intermediaries fairly. So we'll talk about how we require insurance companies to treat their insurance intermediaries fairly in their governance structure.
Deputy Secretary, that is not in the provisions, but there can be work done regarding corporate governance. Now, regarding corporate governance, very often we find that the agents, now unless you get a lot of policies, otherwise the company may not pay you a lot of attention, so they have little protection. So we all along have made the point that in the board, these agents should be represented so that their difficulties are aired, and the regulatory work will affect them. Maybe the supervision is too strict, too much administration, so that they don't have time to meet clients and work on policies. So it says that at least 2 persons with experience from the industry, but you don't spell out the criteria of selection, and you will not commit to letting representatives be represented, whether by elections or not. Now, we already state that there should be 2 persons from the industry with experience from the industry. Now, on whether there should be a provision that intermediaries should be represented. Now, this is very complicated because the industry is complicated. There are brokers, there are staff under the brokers, there are agents, agent companies, and then individual agents and agent companies have their frontline staff, and individual agents include managers and frontline staff. So their situations may all be different. And there are 5 types of licenses that we just mentioned. Many categories of people. Now, if we stipulate that one category should be represented in the board, then how about the others? So we feel that the legislation should be flexible in its provisions so that there should be at least 2 directors with knowledge or experience about the industry. Then there would already be participation from industry. Now, the government wishes to preserve flexibility, but the trade is left with doubts. Nobody knows who it would be. Now, only persons with experience, and all the directors who sit on the board, we don't know whom they would be. Now, we're concerned about possible conflicts of interest. Now, the 2 persons from the industry and so on, can you give us more specifics on the criteria? Now, in legislation, generally, we need to be flexible. We would not spell out the limitation constraints. Now, we understand Mr. Kwok's concerns. Now, the IA is a policy-making body. Now, if we are talking about the concerns of the trade, we have 2 organizations, self-regulatory organizations. We have 2 advisory panels, one on insurance, life insurance, one on other types of insurance. Now, so certainly there would be representatives from the trade there, different persons, different types of persons from the industry. The industry is very wide in scope. For instance, underwriters, actuaries. So we have heard the views of the industry. Mr. Kwok's request is very understandable, but the point of contact should be the advisory panel and not in the policy-making body of the RA. Now, we don't know what the actual composition of the IA would be, so one would rely on the two advisory panels or committees, but those are oriented towards products, life insurance and non-life insurance. Is there a level where the intermediaries can add their grievances? Well, the two advisory panels are not oriented towards products, but towards the type of business concern. Now, life insurance are usually more short-term. Now, life insurance is like medical insurance. Focus on whether there would be enough funds and so on. So the two types of services are different in nature. So certainly agents would be represented in the advisory panels in any case. Now, what's the relationship between the insurance company and the intermediaries? Is it a business relationship or employment relationship? Now, the intermediaries consist of brokers and agents. Now, agents represent the insurance company. So it's not an employment relationship, but a business cooperation. Yes, it's an agent relationship, a business relationship. The frontline sales staff are employees. Now, if it's an agent, it's a business relationship based on contract, and in common law, there is a principal-agent relationship. So it's a commercial and contract relationship, but brokers are also related to insurance companies as a business relationship, but there is a employee relationship between the employees and the brokers companies. So now these matters, should they be under the Labor Department or under this body? Now, under this legislation, when there are grievances regarding staff, should this be under the regulatory organization or the Labor Department? If it's frontline staff, if it's an agent company or broker company with staff, then employees, then those are employees and there are safeguards for employees. But if it's an individual agent, then it's a contract relationship, it's a commercial contract relationship. So when both sides sign the contract, each is aware of his or its rights. Every company may be slightly different in the arrangement, but the Federation of Insurers has a certain model that the companies follow. So you sign on if you find the contract amenable. Now, Mr. Kwok mentioned that there are cases. Now, as OCI, I also have been involved in such cases. Now, these are all individual cases. There are 40,000 agents in Hong Kong. They have their own association of practitioners, and they have a large number of members. Now, the agent system has been in operation for decades. Now, the basic system, or the basic contract, now we've often discussed with these with the practitioners, these who represent the agents. The problem is not a major one. Many have been in the business for decades, but I agree with Mr. Kwok. Sometimes there are disputes in isolated cases. So when regarding such disputes, we would look at the governance of the insurance companies, the system with regard to these agents, whether there are unreasonable situations or unreasonable ways of dealing with things. So it's not a matter of the system. The system has been in operation for decades, and it's just like other jurisdictions. There are agent relationships between agents and insurance companies. It's a tradition of decades. Let me just supplement. Now, there are many problems that have not been certified, that have not surfaced. Now, every time a contract is renewed, the provisions are altered. The staff, the agents have little bargaining power. Now, if you don't sign on, you have to give up all your previous achievements, and you have to move to another company. So it's not entirely voluntary. Now, this is the first meeting. I think we have plenty of time to go into this, and you can reflect the views of the industry, and the industry can also share their views in the coming hearing. Now, there may be unfair provisions in the contract in the future. The OCI, the IA will consider these issues. UC Wing. Now, on the membership composition of the board, now right now it says that not less than 6 directors, 2 must have knowledge or experience with the industry. Now, it's not enough to look at the current business volume to assess the work volume frequently in the future. Apart from regulation, there would be handling of inspections, complaints, appeals, publicity. So 8 members is not enough. I think it's too low a starting point. We can have different sectors of the trade being represented. If you adopt a very bureaucratic structure, then you get a lot of problems from the outset. So perhaps at the start you can have 10 or 12, perhaps a chairman, a CEO, and then 8 directors. Now, say 1/3 of them might be from the industry, so the industry would not be so worried that the board is all made up of bureaucrats. Now, I don't see a complaint and appeals mechanism here in the structure. Now, very often complaints are about petty matters, but if you go straight to the tribunal, then it seems very high up. Now, I wasn't here just now. Now, the IA has a complaint structure that covers the public as well as the industry. Now, once there is a complaint, there would be an appeal, and what is the next step? Eventually, it goes to the tribunal. I'm sorry, can you go explain that? Deputy Secretary. Now, let me go briefly into the process. Now, on the authority, the IA can decide to issue the license to the intermediaries and the insurance companies, and they must abide by certain codes of conduct. And if there is professional misconduct, then there might be a complaint, and there would be disciplinary sanctions and refusal to grant license. And regarding all these, one can make an appeal to the Insurance Appeals Tribunal, IAT. Now, so there might be complaints against the intermediaries. Now, very often, one has to look at whether there is prima facie evidence. If there's none, then one cannot go to the upper level. Now, if there is, there would be investigation, and then there would be a disciplinary hearing, and then sanctions, and once the sanctions are spelled out, then there are 28 days for defense, for fair trial. The defense grounds can be submitted to the IA, and then the IA will make a decision, and then he has 28 days to make an appeal, and then the appeals mechanism is started up.
And the IAT will then be appointed to deal with the complaint. If after ruling has been made by the tribunal, the complainant is still not happy, then he can lodge an appeal with the appeal court against the decision or the procedures. So, the decision of the IAT is not final, right? Yes. Mr. Yu, I don't know whether there is any organization under the IIA to accept complaints. Take the Tourism Council as an example. We have a body to accept the complaints from consumers. But from the industry, well, there is another organization. And there is also the Consumer Relations Committee. It will consider the complaint on the basis of facts. I'd like to know whether you have only one organization or one setup to deal with complaints from both the industry and consumers. If that's the case, I think if you have separate setups, it will be fairer and more objective. Now, Mr. Yu talked about the 8 members in the IA. In fact, this is just about the board. Well, there are staff under the IA for inspection and regulation. The OIC, which I heard, has got staff to do that, but because we have a self-regulatory system for the time being, usually the SRO responsible for dealing with the cases, barring a few exceptions. It is better if the SRA conducts the investigation, because they have to consider the exhibit or tape recordings which are highly confidential. Because I am the regulator, I can have access to such information anyway. And so if I'm responsible for the investigation, then I can consider the effects of the case before making a decision. The IIA is also a very neutral regulator. There is no need for it to favor either the industry or the company or the complainant. As put out by the DS, we sometimes receive frivolous or unreasonable complaints. So the OIC will objectively read all the documents and listen to all tape recordings and make a decision on the basis of current regulatory requirements. Of course, throughout the process, we will ensure that all the elements of natural justice are there. For instance, there can be representations and there can be legal representatives, so on and so forth. And this will also be present in the framework under the bill. If a person is not happy with the decision and would like to make an appeal, then the IAT is relevant. All right, all about defense. To deal with the defense, I'd like to know whether they will be someone from the IIA or a separate organization or a committee. Well, under the bill, it will be the IIA, but for investigation and sanctions, well, they will be taken up by two different departments. There is a Chinese wall between the two. So after investigation is done, then the case will be forwarded to the department responsible for conducting hearings and sanctions. I think you should set up a separate committee for defense. You should have someone which is different from this. I think it would be more appropriate if you have someone to consider the defense, because you are talking about both the consumers and also the industry. If you don't have enough credibility, people may challenge you for protecting members of the industry. Well, the complainant can be both the consumer or a member of the trade complaining against another member of the trade. And then after investigation, the defendant may be either a consumer or a member of the trade, because there can be conflicts or disputes between members of the trade. Mr. Yu, am I asking too many questions? Well, if you don't mind, you can queue up again. Right, as I said, there is no time limit. Mr. Dennis Kwok. Since This is the first meeting I'd like to talk about the regulatory issues or financial issues. Annex E, financial implications. You will first provide the $500 million as a lump sum provision, assuming that it will last for 5 years. And then afterwards, the IIA will be financially independent to be funded by levies. And are you quite confident that this financial arrangement can work? In 2009, we commissioned a consultancy to carry out a study of the financial arrangements. This $500 million can be a lump sum, can be a startup fund. Now, after even in the first year, the IIA can charge a levy of 0.04% from all insurance premiums, and it can grow according to an incremental scale. So we are quite sure that after 5 years, the IIA can be financially sufficient. Allow me to supplement. Given the understanding of the state of the industry, well, we have done some projections, assuming that we have a certain number of companies and agents and policies. We believe that what we propose here will be sufficient. The $500 million will be provided because the levies and also license fees will only grow gradually. As the dear said, in the first year we won't collect too much, and then it will grow gradually in the remaining 4 years. So the $500 million is meant for making up the shortfall. Based on our understanding of the current state of the industry, we're quite confident that the financial arrangements will work. Whether there will be major changes in the industry, of course, we don't know. But everything is in the bill. And if the IIA wants to increase the levy percentage or license fee, it has to come to LegCo for approval first. Thank you. And Annex E. You mentioned the 40-odd civil servants and also non-civil servants. You have to spend $23 million, or rather some money for abolition of office. I don't know why you have to sack them all, because they have expertise, they have institutional knowledge. You want them to retire first to ensure the independence of the IIA. I fail to understand. You have to spend another $32 million to do that. Well, this is because in the government, to abolish a certain department or a certain office, we have to do this under the law. After we have set up an independent organization, it will have its own autonomy. The 48 civil servants were recruited by the government or the OCI. And we cannot force them to serve the new organization, because it is already a different organization. The functions and the statutory duties may be similar, but the nature of the organization is totally different.
So also in line with international regulatory core values, now financial regulatory organizations should be independent of the government. So if it remains staffed by civil servants, then it doesn't meet that requirement. So the OCI has to be disbanded, and then the following day there will be handover of all the powers to the IIA. If the colleagues wish to continue in this work, they can apply on their own. If they have the experience, then I believe the IIA will consider that helpful and needed. But we cannot force them to go to the new organization because it's not part of the government. It's different structure. So the OCI would be different from the future IA. There would be different employers. So right now is a civil servant relationship between the OCI and its staff, and in the future that would be quite different. So it's like in the HKMA, now the employees are not civil servants, even though their system is similar to that of the government. So I understand, yes. In the first round, Chen Kim Paul, and so on, they have to be in the second round. The first round, Ellen Leong. I'm sorry, there are many meetings today. I wanted to attend the PowerPoint presentation, but I was unable to. Now I would like to ask what's the government's thinking. Now the industry is now regulated by the OCI. There are several self-regulatory organizations covering the intermediaries. Now, is the ultimate objective is that we are moving from self-regulation to regulation by the authority with registration, sanctions, etc. Now, right now we have the Insurance Agents Registration Board, the Hong Kong Federation of Insurers, and the Hong Kong Confederation of Insurance Brokers and Professional Insurance Brokers Association. Now, are they quite happy to hand over the powers? We thank Mr. Leong for his views. Now, our consultation period has been 3 years. At the first, there has been some tension, and now the 3 SROs are agreeable that the IA will be helpful to the long-term development of the industry. And last Friday, the IMF conducted a financial assessment for Hong Kong, as done every 10 years. In 2003, they already proposed that Hong Kong should establish an independent insurance authority. And now, 10 years later, they say that they should be implemented as quickly as possible. Right now, for the intermediaries, there is no statutory power to conduct investigation. So this is not a very satisfactory system. So they are very supportive. And the IMF really urges Hong Kong to have an independent insurance authority. Now, since the industry itself is willing to move from the self-regulatory arrangement to a government supervision system, what's the transition arrangement? Now, Mr. Leung understands the problem. The intermediaries are affected. Right now, there is a 3-year transition period. So the intermediaries already registered with the 3 SROs will be regarded as licensees. They are grandfathered within the 3 years. And the intermediaries do not have to pay license fees within 5 years. Now, the cases of complaint not yet completed will be taken up by the IA. So the change of the system should not hinder the progress of the complaint. So if someone has applied to be registered as an intermediary and if the registration has not been completed, he has to apply anew to the IA, because one must be effectively registered before the IA comes into being. Otherwise, he cannot be automatically registered, so he has to apply anew. Now, for the 3 SROs, they have 3 different sets of arrangements for investigation or registration or appeals. Now, regarding the licensing system and appeals, etc., we discussed with them in detail the transition arrangement, and information has to be supplied to the new IA. So we have set up a transition work group in January this year with membership from the 3 SROs and the intermediaries, and it's very transparent. Our records, we have minutes of meetings that are online, and you can see that that in the website of the FSTB. Now, the cases of complaint will be taken up, not yet completed, will be taken up by the IA, but the IA will follow the old rules of code of conduct and penalties, sanctions, etc., because that would be more fair once the complaint was under the old system. Now, you anticipate a 3-year transition period. Are you confident that these matters that are not yet completed, these cases will be concluded within those 3 years? And you say you have a working group on transition. Of course, you have to harmonize the 3 codes of practice and consolidate them into one. And of course, the 3 SROs and intermediaries are participating, and that's good. But will this code of conduct be part of the bill? Or will, upon the resumption of second reading, you would be able to let the Bills Committee scrutinize the code of conduct, the new code of conduct, or at least an outline? Now, if it's about inspection, investigation, and appeals mechanism, that's in the legislation. Now, on code of conduct, that's on code of standards of practice. We are making some consolidation arrangements. Now, at a more mature drafting stage, we will perhaps submit that for to you. Now, the IA has not yet been set up. Once that is set up, they will check and find when they find the draft is okay, then there will be consultation. Regarding the code, will you come and make it accountable to us? Now, there is complexity. For instance, the code of conduct for intermediaries is different from that of brokers. To put it simply, now at the later stage of the Bills Committee, maybe there will be a first draft. We will do the best we can, but we don't want to make the commitment on behalf of the future IIA. So it's for the IIA to do the consultation and then to issue the code. So upon the coming into effect of the bill, the code regarding intermediaries will come into effect later. Now, as for the 3-year transition period, that has little to do with these cases. We're talking about their licenses, because they cannot do business unless they have a license. There are nearly 80,000 intermediary companies or individuals. So under a seamless transition, how can they continue in their business? So in the 3 years, the IA will be able to issue them with the new licenses, and in the interim, they can still do business with the old licenses. So it's all under your control. It's really about issue of licenses. So understand a bit more about the thinking behind the government policy. So the role of this committee will be ended after the establishment of the IA. Now, the code of practice reached eventually will have nothing to do with us. So you're saying that the code, if you are interested, you will let us have a copy of the draft at a certain stage. But even if you don't let us see the draft, it's also okay, because the thinking of the administration is that this committee's role is only regarding the setting up of the IA, and thereafter we will not have any role. Basically, that is the case, because this bill is to amend the existing insurance companies ordinance. The OCI under the ICO has the power to regulate the insurance companies, and the intermediaries are under the SROs. So we will set up an independent IA that will mean a switch from a government department, and also to the other objective is to set up a registration system for intermediaries, and there will be a code of practice, and that will. So regarding those details, that will be in the subsidiary legislation, and we will come back to LegCo. Now, The financial resources also will come from the levy, and the CE has to also to make a decision. Mr. Chan Kim-paul has yet to speak. Now, to give a simple answer, if it's subsidiary legislation, then, well, there are matters under the principal legislation and there are details under the subsidiary legislation. Now, the Bills Committee is scrutinizing the bill to set up the IA, but the role of the LegCo to monitor the work of the government always exists. If we want to monitor the work of the IA, that's under the Financial Affairs Panel. The panel concerned will monitor the administration, and this Bills Committee is merely to scrutinize the bill for setting up the IA.
Oh, I really don't want to take up more of Mr. Chan Kim-paul's time, but can the DS give us a paper on what he said just now? Okay. All right. Before Mr. Chan Kim-paul speaks, I give the floor to Mr. Paul first. All right, I'm going to be very brief. I think we'll talk about the regulation of three trades. The insurance sector, the pharmacist industry, which is more controversial. I think over 9% of the industry were against that bill, and also the third industry is the tourism industry. So DS, you told us that you conducted public consultation for almost 3 years. At first, there was some tension, but now as the tension is diffused. Can you tell us what were the most controversial issues in the first place? Can you, for instance, tell us points where there is already a consensus or where the government has already conceded? At first, the industry was self-regulatory, and there will be an IA set up. At first, the industry was quite resistant about this idea, and the latest public consultation document was issued in November 2012, and we had about 16 or 17 briefings with different organizations. We've also met with different organizations and intermediaries, and we also have meetings to further explain our proposals. So after this very frank discussion, the industry now understand that a licensing regime is conducive to the development of the industry. Mr. Chan Kim-paul was present. Now, for the insurance sector, we must ensure that the practitioners are dedicated and the policy holders are well protected, and the public have confidence in industry. Well, I think you're just chanting slogans. All right, we understand that from changing from a self-regulatory regime to having a regulator, people will be resistant towards the change. Now, for the IIA, you have the chairman and 6 non-executive directors, with 2 at least are from the sector, and also there will be a chairman. So, was there any discussion on was it an issue as far as the governance structure is concerned? Yes, it is. We had a detailed discussion. Or if you already briefed members on this, there is no need. I don't want to take up members' time. at least it was less than 2 members from 2 non-executive directors from the trade, but now it is no less than 2, or at least 2. Mr. Chen Kimpo, I thought we could complete this meeting in 1 hour, but I never anticipated there would be such a heated debate. All right, I'll first comment on the policies, and for details, I'll leave it to the clause-by-clause stage. First, I must thank the OIC and the FSTB for conducting many rounds of public consultation and meetings with the industry. Some of the issues are already resolved, but the outstanding points are a bit difficult. I may not be able to point out all the important differences. First, the requirements on the integrity or code of conduct. Now, we are quite concerned about what is in the best interest of policyholders. Of course, I understand that we want to protect the best interest of policyholders. But when it comes to the implementation, we're both brokers and agents. For brokers, it's okay. They represent the consumers anyway. But for agents, they have their relationship with their insurance company is an agency contract. They are unlike self-employed persons. They have the responsibility to consider the interests of their principals, and you want them to act in the best interest of policyholders. Of course, the trade would not oppose this, but how can you ensure that people will not be caught inadvertently? We want you to clarify this. The best approach is to write down in the bill what is meant by acting in the best interest of policyholders, for agents in particular. And if you can't do that in the law, well, you said that you're going to have guidelines, but what is the statutory status of guidelines? Can you say in the law that once the guidelines are complied with, that is already deemed to have fulfilled the legal requirements? I want you to do it, to set out clearly in the bill. That's the best. But of course, it also depends on how you're going to do it. For instance, in the best interest of policyholders, well, the most extreme case is should commissions be returned to consumers. But of course, this is not realistic or practicable. If they know that there are many gray areas in your bill, we know that most members of the public are reasonable persons, but there are a handful of some which are not. So how can you ensure the livelihood of the tens of thousands of agents working in this industry, and even the insurance companies might be affected? Because they may cause trouble, and we may have to go to lawsuits. Now, if you can't do that, at least you should put it clear in the law that even though the guidelines are not fully complied with, the persons concerned will not be subject to civil claims or criminal prosecution. But of course, I don't think this is the best approach. Please consider the first and second suggestions. Do you want to respond first, or should I exhaust my list first? The bill is rather complicated. I don't think we can complete all our discussion on policies in one meeting, not even two. And you see, members have asked a lot of questions, and they are not duplicating. So, as chairman, I believe we need more than one meeting on policy issues. What you asked was very necessary. Can you first tell the administration all your questions first so that the other party can give a detailed reply before the next meeting, because we still need time to discuss date of our next meeting and for public hearings. We don't have a lot of time left for this legislative session, and there are also other meetings, and the availability of venue is also quite tight. All right, we have to end by about 12:45, but you can continue to ask questions. I'll control time. All right, Mr. Sin Chung Kai is worried that the whole board will be made up of representatives from the trade. This is not going to happen because after our assistance, you have said there will be at least 2, but no, we are not greedy. We want us to have about 25% representation in the board. Is that possible? I think this is very reasonable so that we can be duly represented. I think Mr. Wang Yukman doesn't understand our industry well. We need the industry's assistance in promoting the development of the industry. Hong Kong is a financial hub. We cannot overregulate because that will stifle the development of the industry. So we have to ensure that there is proper protection for the policyholder with sufficient representation or participation of the industry. Although this is a regulatory body, it is important that the industry is involved. And intermediaries are most worried about future disciplinary sanctions. Mr. Yu has made a very good point. Once a decision is made, an appeal can only be made to the IAT, which is going to be legally costly. So I think Mr. Yu's suggestion is very good. Can you consider a discipline and appeals a committee for disciplinary sanctions? Or at least there should be expert groups within the IIA. If the decision is different from the expert committees within the IA, then you have to reconsider the decision. The industry has got a self-regulatory setup for more than decades.
There are people who do it voluntarily, lawyers, doctors who sit on these panels, and they have become familiar with the industry. At first, they might want to be on the side or on the side of the consumers. Then they know they have to strike a balance, and that is with experience accumulated. That experience is very valuable. So when IA is first set up, the officials or the staff may not be experienced. Right now, it's not satisfactory. You investigate, you decide whether to prosecute, and you make the final decision. So you are the prosecution, the judge, and the investigator. That is not satisfactory. And these people who sit on it, if they are all new, then how can you make the practitioners confident? They are 80,000 people. How can they believe that you will be fair? If you ask them to go to court or tribunal, then it's unfair because it's too costly, then they cannot take the legal avenue. So don't say no so early. So, and let's not waste the efforts of the volunteers who sit on the SROs. They spend Saturday mornings and they accumulate a lot of experience over many cases. So you need these people who the trade have confidence in, and they will be able to offer you good advice. And also, will there be an appeals committee? One doesn't have to go to lawyers, and stuff is taken up by volunteers, and only in the end you go to the tribunal. Now, the tribunal is like a criminal court. In that case, shouldn't we rule out the award of costs? People who want to go to the tribunal might not dare to go there because of the cost, possible costs involved. So you should try to allay their worries, their concern. Now, there are two types of intermediaries. Now, for the brokers, they can be directors of another company. Now, they can be the same people under a different name. But for the intermediaries, you cannot be a member or a director or investor of another agent company. We know your principle because maximum of 4 companies for the agents. Now, so you don't want to have the loopholes. But if they are frontline staff, can you let them be directors and investor? Because many people, they start a company, and when they acquire another company, they have to send a director into that company, both before and after the acquisition, so that they become familiar with the company. Otherwise, if a new person does that, then the purchasing of the company may be in the way of normal operations. So, before acquisition, they might have to send somebody into the new company, before the acquisition is completed. So the intermediaries cannot go into these companies as in other fields. So it's unfair. So in the end, you would be left only with brokers because you choke the intermediaries out of existence. So we hope you can come back. Please give us better consideration and not just give the old explanations. Try to resolve the issue for us. And also about the advisory panels. There are already 2 advisory panels, one general, one life. So we hope you would ask their views, for their views in respect of all policies. But how do you ensure that they are really consulted? Now, some people say that there should be many meetings, but I think quality is more important. But perhaps at least 1 meeting every 2 months, so that these panels are not merely for decoration. they must be able to fulfill their role. My final point is about the $10 million fine. Now, if the intermediary loses his license and you further fine him, then there must be proportionality. I'm sure you wouldn't levy it lightly. If the amount is small, you wouldn't levy a very high fine. But for the intermediary, they are very concerned. Maybe you can put it clearly in that the fine would be proportional to the person's financial resources. Now, if he is near to being bankrupt, or if he has earned only just $100,000 of commission a year, now if you send them to prison, but if you still levy a very high fine, then they are very worried. I know that probably wouldn't happen, but they are concerned that some decision maker might not be reasonable at some future point in time. So can you make it clear that once there is a prison sentence or some other penalty, you wouldn't levy a fine that is out of proportion to their resources? Now, the questions by Mr. Chen are very professional, and I'm sure that in your discussion with the administration in the past, you have already raised them, and his raising these issues again today shows the urgent, earnest desire of the industry for a fresh response from the administration. At the next meeting or during clause-by-clause scrutiny, I think we can have a detailed discussion. But let me just address some of the major policy issues. It will be very quick. Now, on best interest, I understand that. Now, I meet the industry very often. It's just like at present, like we have guidance notes for the insurance companies. It spells out how we as the regulator will interpret the law, what it can be done, what cannot. Now, will it cover everything? Of course, when new businesses, practices emerge, we will address those. So we are not trying to catch them on some fine points. We want them to act in the interest of the clients, but we can address the points issued in the guidance notes. Now, on the board, we already talked about that a lot. Now, on the tribunal mechanism, it's not criminal. Now, regarding the conduct, now if they break the rules, there would be sanctions. Now you said that they would be imprisoned. No, they wouldn't be imprisoned. Well, if deception is involved, well, if there is deception or if false documents is submitted to the regulator, those are separate criminal offenses. Here we are talking about sales practice. Now, if there is infringement of code of conduct, there would be disciplinary sanction. Now, there would be different types of sanction, and they must be proportional to the seriousness, level of seriousness. Now, I'm sure, well, you cannot give a verbal answer within a short time. So please give us a written document on what you just said. And I believe Mr. Chen Kim-po can be accountable to the industry. Next item of agenda, I'd like to ask the hearing. How should we deal with that? I hope to write to the 18 district councils to ask for their views. And then on the electrical website, we would publish notices inviting comments from the public. Now on the date, we cannot fix that. I discussed that with the Secretariat already, because in the remainder of this term, before the end of the term in July, the meetings are closely packed and the venues are all taken up, so we have to make a detailed check. We need room 1 for the hearing. We can only get the information later regarding room 1. I hope we can have another meeting before the end of this term. Will it be a hearing or a policy discussion session? I don't know now. If we cannot arrange for a hearing, then we will have one more policy discussion. That's because of the venue problem. Because for policy discussion, we can use a smaller room. Because I believe a hearing will be attended by many people, including those from the trade. If we cannot arrange for the venue, then we can only have that hearing at the beginning of the next electrical term. Now, the Secretariat will let you know about the details. If there are no other issues, end of the meeting. Thank you.